So many creepy details have been coming out about the Idaho case, specifically about Bryan and what he was doing when he was arrested, things that were found in his home, in his car, on his phone, and we're going to talk about it in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. That's the sofa back there and that's Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane holding the squad down, and my name is Paul. Thank you for joining us today. What we're going to be discussing today is all things Idaho 4 case. If you're new to the channel, I'm going to quickly go over what that case was, or if you're new to the case I should say. But if you've been following me, you know recently we've been really just paying attention to the Murdoch case, but we have been following this one as well. So if you're unfamiliar with it, we're going to very quickly go over a quick synopsis of it. I do have a big playlist, and you can also find many other YouTube channels that discuss the case if you want to go in like a deeper dive of it. But specifically what we'll be talking about after the overview is some of those recently released search warrants, what some of the stuff or what he was doing, which was completely bizarre when he was arrested. Allegedly the photos that he had of some of the victims or one of the victims or whoever on his phone, and then some other little updates about the house getting torn down, things like that. So let's go ahead and jump on in. I'm going to put throughout this video some screenshots of articles as well as one video clip I believe, and I'll just make commentary on it. So here we go. Okay, so the first one that is up here is the quick little overview, and I'm just going to skim through this again. This isn't meant to be like a deep dive into what this case is all about, but specifically recent things going on with it. So Madison, Kaylee, Zana, and Ethan, they were students and they all lost their lives by being stabbed to death in an off-campus rental home in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th. This is when a masked intruder entered the home, took all of their lives with a fixed blade knife. More than a month later, authorities did arrest Kohberger. This is Bryan. He was a 28-year-old graduate student and teaching assistant at Washington State University, not far from where they lived in a different town. He was charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of felony burglary. I'm sorry, I'm used to saying his last name. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, which is what we're going to be talking about here. That was on December 30th. He waived his extradition to Idaho, meaning he voluntarily agreed to return to the state to face the charges against him, and he went back on January 4th. Okay, so that's the quick 2-cent version there. Let's go ahead and start off by looking at a news clip talking about what happened when he was arrested.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags. He was taken into custody at his parents' home in Pennsylvania back in December.
Okay, so top 10 ways to look completely guilty. That is bizarre, right? But it just adds into it. Now, again, let me just go ahead and slap the word allegedly all over this. He has not been tried. He has not been convicted, right? So there is that. I mean, he is not guilty of these crimes yet. They're still gathering evidence, and it seems to be mounting against him. So that part right there, that detail of him doing that, makes me wonder a couple of things. Like, number one, obviously, he was trying to, hide DNA or something. I don't know. But I'm also wondering if he planned on taking that garbage and going back out later to dispose of it later. Because, like, why would you put your own stuff in a little Ziploc bag in the garbage, but then throw it all away if you were trying to hide something? That part doesn't make sense. It's almost like he was trying to hide his tracks there. So much of this case, if it was him that did it, it's like he covered his tracks in one way, but then in other ways it was so weird that it's just like, what? Like, it doesn't make sense. Now, also keep in mind, this is somebody who was wanting to go into criminology and this kind of a thing, right? So that's what also makes it bizarre, because there's some things that just, at least I feel like, wouldn't he know better at this point? Okay, so now we're going to talk about the search warrants. We're going to talk about some of the things found in the home. We're going to talk about some of the things found in the car. So let's go ahead and look at the first page of the one specifically about the home. This, again, is the Pennsylvania. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go through this list. It's on the screen here. And I'm just going to kind of give some of my thoughts. I'll spend more time on other things. So the knife, that doesn't really register with me unless there was a whole bunch of stuff, along with it. A book with underlining on page 118 would pay good money to know what that is. An AT&T bill for Bryan, again, not that interesting. The Glock 22, doesn't really ring a bell, or not really ring a bell. It doesn't strike me as anything because, again, maybe it was his parents. That doesn't just strike me as anything. A lot of people have guns. The 5mm 8 Wesson pocket knife, again, a lot of people have knives, they have guns. Specifically related to this, yes, in the context, it does make it a little more intriguing, but it's not like, and it had blood all over it kind of a thing. So, vehicle paperwork, a laptop, I would be curious to know what was on that laptop, obviously. Green leafy substance in a green container, very intriguing. I doubt it's oregano. So we have more leafy green substance in a plastic bag. Very big fan of the oregano, white paper, a power cable, a cell phone, a Glock 40 caliber magazine, empty books. Now this is also interesting because remember the description of the dude that was in there in the house where he was a black hoodie and black mask and all this. So here we have black face mask, a prescription, black gloves, one black mask. So again, is this like a huge oh my gosh? But no, when you start looking at like circumstantial, all this kind of stuff, one would hope, right? Not hope, because obviously you want the evidence to match up to bring justice, but thinking in the terms of someone who is willing to pull off something so horrific and brazen, it's like surely they would have gotten rid of the outfit they wore there, right? But there's no telling with this one. So then we go on to Pennsylvania. Personal identifying documents, New Balance shoes. So then we also list off a bunch of dark colored clothes, jackets, stuff like that. So it's like they're taking anything that seems to, fit this bill, right? Obviously, they're going to want to try and match up, number one, is it the actual jacket, right? I mean, obviously that would be a dead ringer. But number two, fibers, this kind of stuff. So that's interesting to me. Clear plastic gloves. Then number 26 is a laptop with damage. Now this intrigues me because I'm like, okay, did he try and destroy it? Or was it just a broken laptop? I mean, I have broken laptops, right? So that doesn't necessarily jump out to me, but it's like, was this intentionally messed up? That kind of thing, right? Then we have a record of sale of the Glock 22. Then we have an item taken, a photograph was taken of an item, but it wasn't taken. I would be curious to know what that is. There was a note in the desk. Now that's something I would be very curious to know what the note is, right? Is it incriminating? Is it like what have I done? That kind of a thing. I'd be very curious to know about that. Criminal psychology book. Okay, this doesn't surprise me simply because of what he was doing, but also in the context. That's the thing where I'm like, okay, were there specific things highlighted that might be like, this is a little bit odd. Then we have an extra large Columbia Navy fleece. Again, in line with all the stuff that they're doing. A man's hand drawing. Probably one of the most interesting things on here, or not one of them, but one of them, is this next one here, a number 35. 10 curls inside a glove inside a box. I'm very intrigued by this. Now, right off the rip, to me, that just sounds like a memento type thing, and not like from him, but like, again, it's like, where did this come from? Is this like his mother who kept a lock of hair from one of the kids? That type thing. Because immediately when it was done in this way, like inside a glove, inside a box. But the glove thing is weird to me, right? Because I'm just like, I'm thinking of the baby hairs that my mom kept, right? And that kind of thing. Or when you see them and they usually have a ribbon around it. Or something like that. So inside of a glove, I'm like, that's odd. So this also makes me think immediately of like a plastic glove, like, I hate to say it, but like a crime scene glove, right? Something you would wear to a crime. One of the gloves like he already has in this. And then inside a box, and again, what I'm thinking of, there's two streams I have here of thought, is like a jewelry box on top of a dresser and it's baby hair, or inside a glove that was used at the scene of a crime, and it's like in a box, like, some weird random box or something that was like traveling home with him. That part right there, if it turns out to be, one victim's hair, number one, he's done, right? I mean, absolutely, right? I mean, you just can't get around that. I will be shocked over that. Okay, let's continue. So then they have more various criminology books, dark colored hats, dark colored gloves. Then you have more varieties of black clothing, this kind of stuff. So again, took tons of clothing, which I just found to be very interesting to see. Mostly not interesting that they took it because it was very expected, but to see if it comes back with anything. Because again, this is going to be damning evidence if they can attach any of his clothing to things that they found at the crime scene, and obviously any signs of the crime scene on the clothing that he had at his house, because there's no reason for it to be there, right? Now they also have listed more, paperwork from Washington State University, and then also a shop vac. I'll be very interested to see if anything comes out of that, because it'll be interesting to see if he was like, what he did with his car, right? Because we're going to get to that in a minute. So again, they could find anything in there at this point. He had, a minute to clean his car and other things. Now, continuing on, a note to Dad from Bryan. Would be so interested to know what that said, right? What kind of a note was this? Was it ominous? Like, what did it say? So continuing on, notebooks, all-in-one laptop, a computer, dark clothes in a laundry basket, tailor cutlery, knife with a leather sheath, very interesting. Then 4 buccal swabs, and then 2 pair of colored boots and 1 pair of brown boots. So, or 2 pair of dark colored boots, I should say, and then 1 pair of brown boots. So again, it's like they were dotting their I's and crossing their T's with all this information. And again, I'm very curious to see what comes of those things from there. Now let's move to the car. So of the car, what I find interesting is, the Ziploc bag with the pink zipper, plastic baggie with the green zipper, some change, gloves, receipt, car insurance, registration, hiking boots, the comfort and key holder. Then, we get in here, tire irons, shovel, goggles, floor mats, door panels, seats, seat cushions, headrest, seat belt, visor, fiber, brake pedal, gas pedal, phone charger, band-aid, wrappers, maps, documents, seat belt, boot. So they stripped this car. Okay. And the driver's side, which again will be very interesting to see what they come out of that. Because think about that scene, again, allegedly, if it was him that left it, it's like, how did you walk out of there without getting any of that stuff on the car, right? So I'll be very curious to see if any of that stuff comes back. So the fact that they stripped this car, went to the house, got all this stuff, I mean, this is like, okay, we are on it and we are going to nail our guy to the wall. Okay, so next I want to talk about an article. I'm going to put the screenshot up here. You can see it says accused Idaho killer Bryan Kohberger allegedly had pictures of victim on his phone. This is by Steve Helling, and this is in the magazine People. And so let's just quickly go over one of the highlights that I found most interesting. And it says the man accused of killing the Idaho students last November allegedly had pictures of one of the female victims on his phone, a source familiar with the investigation tells People. A phone that belonged to Bryan was collected after his arrest, and according to the source, authorities found pictures of the victim on the device. The source did not specify whether they were photos that he had taken of her or if they were downloaded from her social media. He had more than one picture of her, the source says. It was clear that he was paying attention to her. Now, I find this interesting because, of course, it has been, the big thing of why these young people? Why this house? Who was in the house that he was after if it was someone like that? Basically, why? Why and why? And I think that's a huge thing that so many people want to know, but also, was there one person, the young lady that had the stalker, was this the stalker? How long had he been scoping them out? So as little bits of information like this come out, now again, this is like the source and all this, so this is not verified. I mean, this is like grain of salt type information to me, and so once it's like officially verified, I'll be more like, okay. But there's been enough of this around just to be like, this is interesting. There's seems to be some gaining traction, some validity with all this kind of stuff, and it'll just be curious to find out, because I think what's going to be most heartbreaking, well, the whole thing's heartbreaking, right? And not most, I shouldn't say that, but another heartbreaking aspect, I should say, is if we do find out that, it was this person or persons in the house and everybody else was collateral damage. And then even more bone chilling is the people that did survive, how they were able to survive, by the luck of the draw type. Let's look at this one last article. It's titled "House Where 4 University of Idaho Students Were Killed Will Be Demolished." And let's just read the highlights from this one as well. This is by Myrna All Sheriff, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, I apologize if I'm not. The off-campus residence where the students were found dead in November will be demolished, the school said Friday. The owner of the 3-story King Street house where the bodies of Zana, Ethan, Madison, and Kaylee were found offered it to the university. The offer was accepted by the university. The school decided to get rid of the structure, which is located blocks away from the campus, University President Scott Green said in a statement. Now, I do think that this is probably a good thing to do because, let's be honest, I don't even live out there, and I can already tell you, I'm sure that still that this is a hot spot for not only media, but people going by, all that kind of stuff. I mean, and again, once the investigation, it's like we're done with it. We've got all we can get out of this house, like we're done. I mean, what a horrible thing to be standing there. I mean, it's just, it would give me chill. It gives me chills to see it on TV, right? Let alone to, I mean, can you imagine living there? I mean, nobody would want to. It's just going to sit there. So I think that's amazing that they came to an agreement with that and that they're going to do something with it. Who knows what they'll put there, if they'll do a memorial or just build another house. I'm not sure. So again, we're going to continue following this case. I've been kind of just paying attention to it in the background while we've been, going down the little, pathway of the Murdaugh trial and case and all that, because so much has been going on with that. But we are going to see this case through and just find out what happened and hopefully see it through to justice for these 4 young, beautiful people and the families that love them. So I appreciate you watching. Drop hearts in the comments for the victims in this case and all the other cases that we talk about. And until we gather around with Roscoe and the sofa and the camera and the computer and all this stuff, I'll see you soon.